Hello and welcome. You're watching Gravitas. I am Molly Gambhir. Here's what's lined up for you tonight. Is the Ukraine war turning nuclear? Well, these fears have been growing, and now there is a fresh twist. Poland says it is open to having US nuclear weapons on its territory. This comes amid the Russia versus NATO nuclear brinkmanship. Meanwhile, there is a rush for iodide pills. The US has ordered anti-radiation pills worth $290 million. Is America preparing for a nuclear winter? Is Poland making a symbolic request, or is this a major escalation? Will Joe Biden put nuclear weapons at Vladimir Putin's doorstep? And how will Putin respond to that? On Gravitas tonight, we discuss. The nuclear shadow continues to loom over Europe, but this time it's not Russia which is drumming up these fears. One of the NATO members, Poland, says it is open to having nuclear weapons on its territory. Now, Poland itself does not possess such technology. So what exactly is it proposing? To host nuclear weapons belonging to the United States, sort of like nuclear sharing. Over the next few minutes, we will discuss all the aspects of this move. What exactly is Poland proposing? Why is it significant? And how are both sides handling this? First, let's talk about the proposal. It was revealed by the Polish president. He was asked about the idea of nuclear sharing in an interview. Listen in to his response. We have spoken with American leaders about whether the United States is considering such a possibility. The issue is open. So Duda says he has already discussed it. What does the White House say? Their spokesperson claims to have no knowledge about such a discussion. In fact, they diverted all questions to the Polish government. I would say that's an expected response. Most governments are not keen to share details about their nuclear program. And now coming to the second question. Why is this proposal significant? Because of two broad reasons. To explain the first one, let me pull out this map for you. Notice where Poland is located. Right next door to it is Russia's biggest ally in this war, Belarus. Earlier this year, Belarus amended its laws to host Russian nuclear weapons. Also, look to the north. Do you see that small coastal enclave to Poland's north? That is called Kaliningrad. It is detached from the mainland, but it is part of Russian territory, meaning Poland and Russia share a border, so the presence of nuclear weapons in Poland is a direct threat to Russia. Knowing Putin, he will not take this lightly. Reason number two, Poland is a former Warsaw Pact member. It was part of the Soviet Union's military alliance. If Poland does get nuclear weapons, it will be the first ex-Soviet ally to do so. The question is, will the plan go ahead? Will the US agree to share nuclear weapons? Now, just to be clear here, American nuclear weapons are deployed in NATO countries, in at least 5 of them: Germany, the Netherlands, Italy, Belgium, and Turkey. So these deployments are not without precedent. Having said that, Poland is an entirely different matter. It would undoubtedly be a major escalation. In fact, this was a major issue back in the 1990s when NATO was expanding. Russia had serious concerns about their former allies joining the NATO, so the alliance signed an agreement with Russia, sort of like an assurance deal. Let me now read out one of the clauses. The member states of NATO reiterate that they have no intention, no plan, and no reason to deploy nuclear weapons on the territory of new members, nor any need to change any aspect of NATO's nuclear posture or nuclear policy. That agreement was signed in 1997. When did Poland join the NATO? In 1999. So if Poland does get nuclear weapons, it would be a violation of this treaty. Also, the NPT, the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which means, as things stand, the proposal is unlikely to go ahead. It's more symbolic than strategic. And not to mention, Vladimir Putin would probably blow a fuse. Remember his justification for starting this war? To push the NATO westward, to reduce NATO presence near Russia's borders. So if this nuclear sharing goes ahead, there will be consequences. It would effectively drag the NATO into the fighting. We all know what that means: a nuclear war. The United States seems to be preparing for it. Their health department has set aside $290 million to buy a particular drug. It's called N-plate. Now, N-plate is a blood disorder medicine. It has been approved to treat radiation sickness. In medical terms, acute radiation syndrome. This happens when a person is exposed to high levels of radiation, say from a nuclear explosion. This radiation can reach internal organs within seconds. If that happens, there could be life-threatening bleeding. N-plate is capable of containing this fallout. So the US is buying $290 million worth of this drug. Officially, they are not saying anything about nuclear explosions, of course, but let's face it, it doesn't take much to join the dots. Similar preparations are also underway in Ukraine. The Kiev City Council is handing out potassium iodide pills to residents. In case of a nuclear attack, these pills can limit the damage. We have seen such strategies in the past. I can in fact recount at least 2 instances. In 2011, US citizens started stocking up on potassium iodide pills. What was the reason? Because of the Fukushima nuclear disaster in Japan. Now, I know what you're thinking. Japan is located thousands of miles away on the other side of the world. But when it comes to nuclear explosions, nobody is willing to take a chance. The second instance was in 2018. Donald Trump had just taken office as the President of the United States. His tenure started with nuclear saber-rattling with North Korea, remember. This tweet of his, Trump claimed his nuclear button was much bigger than Kim Jong-un's. And immediately after that, there was a run on iodide pills. But let's be realistic here. America is isolated from any nuclear fallout in Ukraine. But Europe, not so much. This kind of nuclear sharing could set the wrong precedent worldwide. More US allies could start asking for nuclear weapons. Japanese leaders have hinted at this. South Korean leaders have hinted at it. So we could be looking at a return to the Cold War era deterrence, where the world becomes a chessboard and nuclear missiles become chess pieces. Goes without saying, it is the last thing that we need. Guess who else wants to flex its nuclear power? China. October is a defining month for Xi Jinping. He will kick off a historic third term. Before the coronation happens, Beijing seems to be sending out a powerful message. Some new footage has emerged showing China's new nuclear submarine. According to a report, this has happened for the first time. The Chinese state media is pushing these pictures. Take a look.
作为设战止战的杀手锏部队，在未来海战中，我和我的艇员们将始终保持喊马弯弓的戒备状态，蛰伏大洋，时刻待战，随时能战。
Looks quite powerful, does it not? China is clearly demonstrating its naval power. What kind of submarine is this? It's called Type 094A. It was put into service in April last year. What are its capabilities? This submarine, the Type 094A, can launch ballistic missiles over long ranges. Through this submarine, China can hit targets that are as far as 10,000 kilometers. That is good enough to hit the US mainland. And China has now put this submarine on a training mission. This submarine was inducted on a significant day, the 72nd anniversary of the People's Liberation Army Navy. Guess who presided over that ceremony? It was Xi Jinping himself. The Chinese president gives special attention to the Navy. He wants China to have a blue water Navy. What does that mean? Let me explain, using the words of Xi Jinping himself. The Chinese president stated his position on the Navy way back in 2018. Here's what he had said, I'm quoting, "The task of building a powerful Navy has never been as urgent as it is today." A year later, Beijing released a white paper on defense. It built on what Xi Jinping had said. I'm quoting again. China needs to build a strong and modernized naval force, one that is capable of carrying out missions on the far seas. That is effectively the definition of a blue water navy, a military force on the high seas that can operate in any theater of conflict. The question now is, why does China need a blue water navy? On a fundamental level, this is about China's superpower ambitions. Powerful countries have powerful militaries, a fighting force that can operate almost anywhere. But that would be a rather simplistic way of looking at this. Xi Jinping has specific goals in mind for his all-powerful navy, like seizing control of Taiwan. Yes, events of this year have proved the threat of a military invasion is real. Since the US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan, the Chinese military has relentlessly conducted drills in and around Taiwan. China already has the largest navy in the world. Through these naval drills, it is putting pressure on Taipei. Beijing says those drills should be seen as a warning.
China's position is justified, reasonable and legitimate. Our measures are firm, forceful and appropriate. China's military exercises are open, transparent and professional. They are in line with domestic law, international law and international practice. They aim to warn the perpetrators of the situation and punish the Taiwan independence forces.
Punish the Taiwan independence forces, he said. That threat was for the democratic government of Taiwan. Taipei is taking these provocations seriously. They are also keeping an eye on. Earlier this week, Taipei revealed its own assessments about Xi Jinping's upcoming third term. Listen to this. The strength of the Chinese Communist Party will gradually expand, along with the continuous emphasis on promoting the reunification process in its development strategy. We believe that the Beijing authorities' work on Taiwan has entered the stage of strengthening the practice of the so-called anti-independence and promoting reunification. Let me simplify that for you. Taiwan expects China to escalate the pressure campaign. Already it is working on countermeasures. Taiwan's defense minister is changing some rules of engagement. Chiu Ko-cheng recently spoke to lawmakers in Taipei. He said Taiwan will now start taking Chinese incursion attempts more seriously. Here is what that means. If Chinese airplanes enter Taiwan's airspace, Taipei would treat that as a first strike. Taiwan is sending a message to China. If Chinese jets fly over the island, they are well within their rights to shoot it down. So that's the plan for Taiwan ahead of the 20th Party Congress. Xi Jinping has another problem to worry about. Ahead of his big day, North Korea. Pyongyang has stepped up missile launches in recent weeks. In 12 days, we have witnessed 6 launches. There are growing fears that Kim Jong-un is planning a nuclear test. And it might happen during China's Communist Party Congress. Here's a report.
North Korea's dictator wants the world's attention. Kim Jong-un has tried every trick in the book, from flashy videos to provocative statements.
In particular, the nuclear forces, the symbol of our national strength and the core of our military power, should be strengthened.
But none of those tricks seem to have worked. Kim Jong-un only has one option left, and he could be seriously considering it: a full-fledged nuclear test. The signals from Pyongyang are alarming. The regime has intensified missile launches by firing at least 6 ballistic missiles in less than 2 weeks. One of those missiles flew over Japan and triggered a serious security crisis. Tokyo has reason to believe a nuclear test could come next.
We did not discuss the possibility of a nuclear test, but will remain alert for further provocations by North Korea.
We believe that North Korea may engage in further provocative activities in the future, including conducting nuclear tests.
Japan's neighbor, South Korea, seems to concur. The country's spy agency recently submitted an assessment to the parliament. It says Pyongyang is ready for a nuclear test, and it could detonate a bomb between the 16th of October and the 7th of November. If it happens, this will be North Korea's 7th nuclear test. But China will not respond kindly to a test on October 16. That's the date when the party officials will gather in Beijing for their 20th Congress. And if the past is any indicator, China can punish North Korea for stealing the limelight. North Korea had conducted its last nuclear test back in 2017. At that time, China was preparing to host leaders of the BRICS nations, and Xi Jinping was set to be confirmed as the leader of the Communist Party for a second term. Beijing's response was fierce. It joined the US-led United Nations Security Council sanctions. They cut off North Korea's fuel supply. However, in 5 years, the situation has changed dramatically. The war in Ukraine has divided the world. But for Pyongyang, there is a strategic opening. It has built a tighter alliance with China and Russia. The US says the two powers are actively protecting North Korea at the Security Council now.
This is a clear effort by China and Russia to reward DPRK for their bad actions and cannot be taken seriously by this council. The DPRK has enjoyed blanket protection from 2 members of this council. In short, 2 permanent members of the Security Council have enabled Kim Jong-un.
With the world powers divided, Kim Jong-un could look at it as an opportunity to take his chances. The question is he willing to risk the wrath of its closest ally? Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
You may have noticed that oil prices are up again. It's not because of any new disruption. It's not because of fresh escalations in Ukraine. It is because oil producers deliberately made that choice. I am talking about OPEC and its allies, the cartel of oil-producing countries. They held a meeting in Vienna on Wednesday. It was the first in-person meeting since the COVID-19 pandemic. Most experts were predicting an output cut, and that is exactly what it did. They agreed to slash oil production by 2 million barrels per day. What was their justification? Apparently, to stabilize the markets.
Our priority now is stabilizing market. Now, we could be accused of wanting to influence market in a negative way. That's everybody's prerogative. You and others will see how we conduct ourselves in the months to come.
Well, no one is buying that argument. This production cut is not aimed at stabilizing the markets. It is aimed at driving up the prices. Let me put out the theory behind it: supply and price having an inverse relationship. Meaning, if supply rises, prices will fall, and if supply falls, prices will rise. In this case, OPEC and its allies are doing the latter. They are cutting the supply to drive up the prices, and it's already working. Brent crude rose by 1.7% to reach $93 per barrel. Oil prices are now at a 3-week high. The question is, why now? This is OPEC's largest cut since 2020 during the pandemic. What explains this timing? Simply put, because the money is good. In the past, OPEC countries were happy when oil was trading between $70 and $80, but this year the revenue has been bumper. When Russia invaded Ukraine, oil prices rose to more than $120 per barrel. So the OPEC countries got used to it. With an economic crisis around the corner, they want to build up a cushion. And the best way to do that? Drive up the oil prices and the revenue. Now, coming to the big question, how will this affect you, the consumer? We will have to see how oil companies transfer these higher rates to us. As for the overall supply, it is unlikely to change. Why is that? Because OPEC countries were already producing below their official quotas. So in practice, it won't be much of a reduction. That is the technical part of OPEC's decision. What about the political aspect of it? The United States was pushing OPEC to increase oil production. In July, Joe Biden had traveled to Saudi Arabia to reset his ties with the kingdom. What does Riyadh do? The exact opposite. They have ganged up with Russia to reduce oil output. The White House has called this decision short-sighted. Listen in.
OPEC's decision to cut production's quotas is short-sighted while the global economy is dealing with the continued negative impact of Putin's invasion of Ukraine. Look, it's clear that OPEC Plus is aligning with Russia with today's announcement.
Aligning with Russia. That's a serious allegation to make. The fact is, this oil cut reveals America's loosening influence over Saudi Arabia. Not only have they not condemned Putin's war, now they are siding with him to increase oil prices. Clearly, this is a message to Washington. Is there anything that Biden can do about this? Well, the White House is considering 3 moves. Number 1, to keep releasing oil from their strategic reserves. Like we said at the start, it's all about the supply. If the U.S. can release more oil into the market, prices will cool down. Number 2, legislative action. The U.S. Congress is discussing a bill called NOPEC, the No Oil Producing and Exporting Cartels Bill. It's a bit controversial. Right now, OPEC Plus members and their oil companies enjoy sovereign immunity. Though they are a cartel, they cannot be sued. The OPEC bill aims to change that. It would allow US courts to hear antitrust cases against OPEC members. Now, this bill has a lot of grey areas, like what kind of power can the US courts have over a foreign power? Will it affect diplomatic relations? So, for more than 2 decades, this bill has been stalled. But maybe not anymore. Reports say it could garner 60 votes out of 100 in the Senate, and if passed, it could be a huge blow to the US-Saudi relations. What's the plus side? OPEC may not be able to rig the oil prices so freely. And coming to strategy number 3. Open the oil taps elsewhere in the world. Reports say the US is all set to strike a deal with Venezuela, sort of like a quid pro quo. The US will ease sanctions on Venezuelan oil, and in return, the President Nicolas Maduro will hold free and fair elections in 2024. Just to be clear, neither side has confirmed this deal. It is purely based on reports in US media. But if true, they reveal how desperate Joe Biden is. Remember, November is election month in America. One of the biggest poll issues is the rising energy prices. So Biden seems to be trying everything to keep the markets calm. He made one U-turn with Saudi Arabia. Now he could be making another U-turn with Venezuela. Tells you how powerful oil is in politics. Our next story is from Thailand. On Thursday morning, it witnessed a merciless massacre. A gunman stormed a preschool daycare center and killed at least 35 people, including 23 children. He then went on to murder his child and wife at home, after which he committed suicide. The man has been identified as a former cop who was suspended from duty due to drug abuse. The police are still trying to ascertain his motives. Here's a report.
This is the Naklang district, a quaint area in northeast Thailand. Located around 300 miles from Bangkok, on Thursday afternoon it witnessed a carnage. A former cop armed with a gun and a knife stormed a preschool daycare center and killed more than 35 people, including 23 children. The slaughter unfolded at 12:30 p.m. local time. The gunman entered the school with a shotgun, pistol and knife. He then went on a killing spree, stabbing and shooting anyone he saw. Some victims as young as 2 were attacked as they slept. Images from the nursery show a body lying outside the school. It's purportedly of a woman who was run down as the shooter escaped. Another set of images shows the injured being rushed to a hospital. Many of them succumbed to their injuries in a matter of minutes. As for the attacker, the police say he went back home, killed his wife and child before committing suicide. Why? What was he thinking? What were his motives? The police are yet to ascertain that. But school authorities have described the attacker as a polite man who would always drop off his child at the nursery, but his track record wasn't clean. He used to be a police lieutenant colonel who was dismissed from the job for drug abuse. He had also been to court hours before the shooting. Investigators say this could be one of the reasons behind the incident. Thailand has high rates of gun ownership, but such mass killings are extremely rare. However, in recent times, the cases have grown. In September, a serving army officer shot dead 2 of his colleagues at a military training base. And in 2020, a soldier killed 29 people and injured dozens in the city of Ratchasima. Now a former cop has killed more than 35 people. This has put the government of Thailand in a tough spot. It has been asked to reconsider its policies on gun control. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Our next story is from the Gambia. It is investigating the deaths of 66 children, apparently caused by kidney injuries due to cough syrups. The World Health Organization says most of the products are from India. India has decided to investigate the matter. At the same time, it is requesting the WHO for their report on the matter. Here's a detailed report.
This is the Gambia, one of the poorest countries in the world, located right in the middle of West Africa. In July, it reported the death of 66 children due to kidney injuries apparently caused by cough syrups, namely promethazine oral solution, Cofexmalin baby cough syrup, Make-Off baby cough syrup, and Amagrin N cold syrup. All four happen to be manufactured in India by the Haryana-based Maiden Pharmaceuticals. The company is now facing questions from the WHO. The global health body has sounded a global alert, warning against the use of these products. This is what the WHO said in its statement. Laboratory analysis of samples of each of the four products confirms that they contain unacceptable amounts of diethylene glycol and ethylene glycol as contaminants. As a result, all batches of these products have been deemed unsafe for use till they are analyzed by the respective regulatory authorities. But how exactly did the contents of these products cause the deaths? This, the WHO is yet to answer. Nonetheless, India is pursuing the matter seriously. Reports say India's apex drug regulatory authority has already launched an investigation. Indian government sources say the body has further asked the WHO to provide its report on the establishment of causal relation between the cough syrups and the deaths. The state regulatory authority of Haryana is also looking into the case. Haryana's health minister says if this is confirmed, the authorities will not hesitate in taking strict action.
केंद्र सरकार के हेल्थ सेक्रेटरी और फार्मास्यूटिकल सेक्रेटरी ने आज प्रातः ही हमारे जो हेल्थ सेक्रेटरी है उससे बात
that unnerve us because of just how closely they affect us. Deadly cough syrups was one such story. Here's another. This story is about polluted wombs. Let me tell you what I'm talking about. Air pollution has reached a mother's womb. In fact, not just a mother's womb, but the womb of many mothers. Black carbon particles were found in these wombs, in the lungs of unborn babies, in their liver, their brain. How did this happen? How did air pollution reach babies who are yet to take their first breaths in this world? Let's start with the basics. What do we mean by black carbon? These are among the many particles and gases that are emitted when diesel is burnt, or for that matter, even when coal is burnt. An unborn baby is not exposed to any of this, but the baby's mother is. When the mother breathes in polluted air, it passes through her bloodstream and placenta and enters the fetus. Now, the number of black carbon particles in the womb varies depending on the amount of air pollution that the mother is exposed to. What does this mean for the baby? It means a risk of a preterm birth, low-weight birth, stillbirth, disturbed brain development. It may also mean a miscarriage. The experts who detected black carbon in the womb are from Belgian universities. They examined 60 mothers and their babies. They analyzed tissue samples from 36 fetuses. All of them had black carbon particles, even fetuses that were just 7 weeks old. This is a scary finding, and it affects all the coming generations. You see, a baby is the most vulnerable when she is in the mother's womb, because it is in the womb that the baby undergoes key organ development. Pollutants are now interfering with the developing fetus. In fact, this has been happening for some time. It was in 2018 that air pollution particles were first detected in placentas. The finding was made by one Professor Jonathan Grigg of London's Queen Mary University. And commenting on this recent report, he told a British media outlet, I'm quoting, "Seeing particles getting into the brain of fetuses raises the stakes because this potentially has lifelong consequences for the child." Like I said, this tells us what lies ahead for the coming generations. They may be born with health problems because of pollution, because of the pollution that their generation is not even responsible for. You know, the recent study was conducted in Aberdeen and Grampian. These are regions in Scotland. And these are regions with relatively clearer skies and good air quality. Earlier today, the AQI, or the air quality index there, was between 13 to 22. These numbers don't even fall into a category of concern. They are well within the safe limits. And yet, mothers breathing this air are ending up with polluted wombs. So imagine what must be happening in some of the world's most polluted places like Delhi, Dhaka, Jakarta, Karachi, Beijing, Singapore, Tashkent, Cairo. Here, the air quality index is way above the safe limits. Thousands of pregnant women in these parts of the world are breathing toxic air every day, exposing their unborn babies to toxic particles. What happens to them? Anthony Lake is UNICEF's executive director. He was recently speaking about the dangers of air pollution. And he said, and I'm quoting, "Not only do pollutants harm babies, developing lungs, they can permanently damage their developing brains and thus their futures." I think that sums it up. Now here's a question for you. When you go grocery shopping or you stock up on your monthly essentials, what are the top things you are likely to look out for in the packaging of the product? The price, for sure, maybe even the ingredients and the nutrition chart, but also the expiry date, because we don't want to end up using expired products. But very often, a product does not mention its expiry date. Instead, it comes with a label that mentions best before. I'm sure you are familiar with them. But what does best before even mean? Is it the same as the expiry date? Does it mean if consumed after the given date, the product will become poisonous? Neither, actually. Guess what? The best before label has nothing to do with safety. It's actually about the quality of the product. Say the label on a packet of chips says, best before July 2023. It does not mean after July 2023, the chips would be harmful for you. It simply means that after July 2023, the packet of chips will not be in its best form. Its flavor or the texture may be a little different. But will it still be good to eat? Absolutely. Long story short, best before is not the same as the expiry date. The label is not the same as the use by label. Use by is equal to expiry date. Best before is not. But not many people know this. When products pass their best before dates, people usually toss them into the bin, throw them out. Also, while shopping, people don't buy products that are close to their best before dates. What's the end result? The United Nations estimates that 17% of the world's food production is wasted every year. Where does this waste come from? Mostly households, says the UN. In the United States alone, 35% of the food goes uneaten. 35%. While the best before label is not the sole culprit, it is a major one, and there is no doubt about that. Let me show you some numbers. 7% of the food wasted in the United States is because of the best before labels. We are talking about up to 4 million tons of waste annually. The obvious question is, what is being done about this? The United States is trying to educate the buyers, be it about the labels or regarding food wastage. Some US chains are standardizing the labels. Walmart, for example, is looking to use best if used by instead of best before. The products will also have a use by label, which means a consumer will be informed about both the safety and the quality of the product. In the United Kingdom as well, many major UK chains are removing the best before labels altogether. This includes Marks & Spencer, Sainsbury's, Waitrose. Even the European Union is fighting against the best before labels. Reports say the EU may announce a new labelling law by the end of this year. And it is expected that the bloc will do away with the best before labels. In India, there is a country-wide shift from the best before label to the use by label. In 2020, India's Food Safety Authority notified the Food Safety and Standards Labelling and Display Regulations 2020. These regulations mandate that pre-packaged food must carry a label declaring the expiry date or the use by date. The best before date, on the other hand, has been made optional. Now, why is this important? One, for the sake of simple messaging. Often labels confuse people. I'm sure many of you have been there as well. You've seen a product that has crossed its best before date and you have chosen to not buy it or eat it simply because you are confused about its safety. Simple labeling clears out this confusion. 2, it helps reduce food waste. And 3, it helps fight hunger. The global problem of hunger. Nearly 830 million people go to bed hungry every day around the world. There's a lot of food out there that is taken off the shelves but cannot be given to those in need. Do you know why? Because of labeling. Several regions around the world have banned donation of food post the date listed on the label. Does not matter if the label is best before. So doing away with this label altogether or accompanying it with the expiry date or the use by label makes a lot of sense. We would love to know what you think on this issue. So do write to us and let us know. Let's now tell you what else made news. Time for Gravitas Global Headlines.
Oil prices rise to 3-week highs as OPEC Plus agrees to its deepest cuts to production since the 2020 COVID pandemic, despite opposition from the US and others. Israel rejects Lebanon's amendments to a US-drafted proposal on resolving long-running maritime border dispute over gas-rich waters off the country's Mediterranean coast. Hong Kong home prices could nosedive 30% through 2023 as interest rates repel buyers, as per Goldman Sachs forecasts. The American Investment Bank issues a pessimistic revision of an earlier forecast that had predicted a 20% decline. A San Francisco jury has found Uber's former chief security officer Joseph Sullivan guilty of criminal obstruction for failing to report a 2016 cybersecurity incident to the authorities. German industrial orders fall more sharply than expected in August as soaring energy costs caused by the war in Ukraine take a toll on Europe's economic powerhouse. 4 family members in California, including an 8-month-old girl, were found dead in a rural area after they were abducted in the city of Merced. Dutch inflation hits a new record of 14.5% in September due to soaring energy prices, pushing the Netherlands among EU nations with highest rates of inflation. Authorities braced for major floods in Australia's east on Thursday after Sydney recorded its wettest year in 164 years, with more heavy downpour expected over the next 3 days. For the first time on Thursday, total rainfall in Sydney surpassed the previous record, set in 1950, since records began in 1858. Two-time champions Chelsea beat AC Milan 3-0 at Stamford Bridge to register their first win in the Champions League this season. Wesley Fofana, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang and Reece James scored for the London side as they rose to the second spot in Group E. A day after an investigation by Chess.com revealed that American Grandmaster Hans Niemann cheated in over 100 online games, the 19-year-old broke his silence and said he is not going to back down and let his chess do the talking.
On that note, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas, leaving you with Gravitas images. Thanks very much for watching.
And nothing has changed. And now today, climate scientists and other people are just.org. You can find out, come to talk, come to events. And someone's not over at the moment. I should take one step back.
Kapten anglický?